What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday night. It's 7 o'clock, which means it's time to go inside the Browns beat right here on the OBR streaming network. The Orange and Brown Report is the oldest and largest and, dare I say, best Cleveland Browns independent coverage site in all of Cleveland. You are tuned in live here, whether you're watching us on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, YouTube, Twitch. We are glad you're here. We are ready for another fun night of talking Browns football. And boy, oh boy, is there enough stuff to talk about with this Cleveland Browns team. But I'm going to leave it up on the screen for a little bit right here. That's our fancy, fancy technology over here above my head. Get your phone out if you're not already a member of the OBR.com and you want to be a part of the OBR.com, where you can read all the best stuff from guys like Fred and Jack and Pete and all the rest of our crew. Jeff, everybody that is writing for the OBR, click that little QR code, scan it, get over there, and that'll take you right to the membership page, and you can sign up there. With you, as always, I am Michael Keefe. Joining me on Inside the Browns Beat tonight, Fred Greetham. Fred, it's another good night to talk Browns football.
Yeah, it is. Getting a little chilly out there, football weather. Fortunately, the Browns found a way to lose again. This time in 36 seconds. Their fate was sealed. And, we've watched them long enough. We've covered them long enough to know that anything can happen. As soon as you think you've seen everything, you haven't seen everything. This team finds ways to lose games. Right after they go 95 yards, looks like they got a semblance of an offense. They were helped by a couple penalties, but a very nice drive, 95-yard touchdown drive. And then they kicked the ball off, 99-yard kick return. And I've said this before, this team is fragile, especially on offense. Something goes wrong, it's derailed. So right after going 95 yards, Mike, that kickoff return, they get the ball back. Here's where you go, okay, we're going right down the field again and answering. What'd they do? 3 and out. Punted it. 74-yard punt return for a touchdown. Game, set, match. 14-7. And the Browns defense hadn't been on the field other than the opening drive. I mean, it's just, I'm watching this game and I'm going, just kick the ball out of bounds, especially on the punt. There's no chance they can run it back if you kick it out of bounds. I know there's a penalty, and I think they get it on the 40 if you kick it but I mean, I know that sounds silly, but that's the third kick return this year for a touchdown. And the special teams have contributed in, I would say, at least 4 losses. The opening game was kicks, lost to the Bengals, 2 kicks you missed. You had a block punt against, I think it was the Ravens. You had a kick return for a touchdown against the Lions, a punt return, and then 2 the other day. So if that didn't cost them the game, 2 games were cost by the special teams.
Yeah. And
2 others really turned the tide. That block punt turned things around in that, I think it was the Ravens' first game. So, yeah, it's just it's a head scratcher and nothing other than we got to get better. We got to get it fixed. Happens.
Okay, let's go there for a minute, because you said a lot of stuff. I think I tweeted, I think I tweeted out, and then I had to say, I'm not giving gambling advice. Please gamble responsibly. But I think I tweeted out before they went on that 95-yard drive. If you put $1 on the Cleveland Browns right now to go 95 yards for a touchdown, you could probably retire at the end of that bet. You could probably just cash that thing out and retire. And then, of course, they go, that's what I should. I should just use stupid tweets, and it'll happen. And, of course, they go 95 yards. What I wouldn't have guessed is all the other stuff. But here's what I want to know from you, Fred. You've been around a lot of coaches. Fred, you've been around more coaches than most NFL media, maybe more than any other NFL media member in all of the league, I think, probably, as far as covering one specific team. I'm not sure there is another team that has had more coaches over your time frame that they've been around than the Browns. So there you go. I'm going to give you that credit. You've heard a lot of them talk. You've heard guys that were great at the microphone, and you've heard Pat Shurmur. and everybody in between. What do we want to hear from Kevin? Like, I every time he gets up and talks, this is the dilemma I have inside of my head. I feel like anybody that thinks you're going to get just candid, open, non-guarded speak from any NFL coach, especially when things are going bad, is just fooling themselves. Like, people will say, "Oh, Dan Campbell's out here saying all kinds of stuff." Yeah, that when it's going bad, Dan Campbell's not at the microphone like chucking guys under the bus. He goes into coach speak mode. So I guess, Fred, you've been around a lot of them. You've seen a lot of them, and I'm sure you've had your opinions on them all. What are we looking for in these situations? Because we really are at the point now where we're tearing into Kevin Stefanski on a weekly basis because he comes out and says, "We're working on it. We got to be better. We got to execute," and all that. Like, what should he be saying?
Well, yeah, his job isn't just to make things easy for the reporters. I'll say that. But this whole shift goes back to what I've covered to Bill Belichick. When Bill Belichick took over with the Browns, he had never coached before, but he really tried to emulate Bill Parcells because that's who he cut his teeth under. And if you remember, that's how Bill Parcells was really the first one to give no information. And Belichick was so surly and he had not won that he got it didn't work for him. Then it worked for him when he went to New England and he won and he could get away with it, but it didn't work here. And before that, and I'm going back to 90s, Bud Carson, was before Belichick, and he was like, he'd just say stuff on a question. He goes, who the heck knows, and
Solid
just
edit,
be real.
good edit work.
Just be a little real. I think what gets me is that there's ways to answer questions without giving information, without insulting your intelligence and my intelligence. Most of the Browns fans that are watching here, that are subscribers to the OBR, that read our stuff, know just about as much as a lot of the people writing like me because they watch everything and listen. And so to say, well, we got to coach better, we got to be better, we got to get it fixed. Okay, that's a given. Can you say anything like, look, our quarterback is not making the right read here, but he's doing something really good here or whatever? I don't know without giving away strategy, but the injury things drive me crazy because, like I said, they used to tell you what was wrong with the guy. Now, it started with Belichick. I remember a guy, we could see his bone sticking out of his leg, and the joke was he's got a sore leg, and like, why can't you say he broke his leg and he's out for the season? It's like, I don't know, but that's kind of the way it is. As far as with Stefanski, he's kind of like, he'd almost be better if he pulled the Marshawn Lynch and say, look, I'm only out here talking so I don't get fined, because they're required to speak so many times. And we all know that's what Lynch did every time, but very little Stefanski says that is helpful as a writer. Where he's best is getting off being the head coach of the Browns. I've been to a bunch of get-togethers where he's invited the media to, off the record, and he tells stories. He's a very engaging individual, but he's not when he's the head coach of the Browns behind the microphone. And I do think once in a while it doesn't hurt to be straight with some information. I joke with the other writers, that we can't now. They even backed off more. We only get to watch like 20 minutes of practice, and it's stretching. And we used to be able to at least film, them going through individual drills. We're not allowed to video anything that the quarterbacks are involved with. Handoffs, just throwing it, to another quarterback. Nothing like that. So there's really very little use. I like the video to, to
Right.
bring to the people, oh, that's kind of what it looks like or whatever.
Right.
But other than, I took a picture of them, they just do their jog up and down. And I did one, and to show Shedeur Sanders was out there. This was back at, when he hurt his back. And he was just kind of lollygagging along. And because there's so many Sander fans, man, I got ripped for looking, oh, you just show him lollygagging. No, I wasn't showing him lollygagging. That he was just jogging back and forth. But that's all we're really allowed to video, of the quarterback. So I quit doing that. So anyway, we always kind of joke saying, yeah, if we were allowed to video, they might be 1-8 instead of 2-7, because we're costing them. These other teams are scouring this information.
Yes.
And, I always said, even video during training camp when we're allowed, if we were that good, then we'd be coaching in the NFL. If we could look at a video and say, okay, now we can beat the Browns because we know what plays they're going to run, that. So it's kind of a moot thing. I don't know who really does a good job around the league because I don't listen to a lot of them anymore, but there's a time to be candid and a time not. I guess you just like a little bit behind the curtain saying, that guy that jumped off sides and cost you the game, why don't you just say he's benched, he's not playing next week, or something once in a while? Because, I asked Stefanski on Monday about as far as any accountability. He had 10 penalties, 78 yards, and you do this over and over. We heard the same thing last year. Isn't that coaching that you're not getting that corrected? And I don't know, but it seemed like if you do that, like I said, how about put in another guy and you're out, instead of going right back to the same guy and go, well, we got to help him, hope he does better next time, and kind of the same way with the coaches, he says, I got a lot of faith in Bubba Ventrone. Well, okay. He's not going to throw anybody under the bus.
No.
And I can tell you that. I'm rambling here, but between you and me and our listen, I felt the last game Baker Mayfield played was against the Steelers, that night game. He got sacked 7-8 times.
Yes, he did.
We were during COVID, so it was a Zoom. And he said after the game some things that he probably shouldn't have said. But he said, we called some bad plays, I think he was referring to Hudson getting beat like 7 times for sacks. Yep. And during that, he kind of called out Stefanski. And then in that rant, he said, and I'm done. I'm having surgery. I'm doing what's best for me. And I said to myself, this guy is done here.
Yeah.
Stefanski is not going to come out and say anything, but I felt, okay, they're going to move him if they can and move on from him. And we all know what happened. They tried to get Watson, and then Baker threw a fit, and they just, had to throw every dollar they could to get Watson to come here, and the rest has been a debacle. But that's how they deal with it. They don't say anything, and there's sometimes some wisdom in that. But as far as the player, I don't know. I just don't see any corrections, any changes, anything getting better. They keep talking about getting better.
Fred, here's a question, because you're in that room. They don't let me in that room. You're in the room, you're around the team, and you've been around Kevin Stefanski now for his entire coaching career here. I guess here's one thing that needs to be clarified, because there is the way Kevin Stefanski presents to the media and at press conferences and fans and all of that. Do you see a difference in the Kevin Stefanski that stands in front of the podium and looks at you in the face and doesn't answer your questions versus the Kevin Stefanski you have seen? And I know you've seen him in like kind of social settings too, but I mean like with the team on the field. I guess that's where people are kind of concerned, right? Is he's not showing this accountability, and he's not showing the fire in these post-game press conferences when he's meeting with the media. He's just very boom, one tone, not going to say anything about anybody specifically, never going to say anything bad about anybody, and the theme is always just going to be, we got to work, we got to get better. What do you see that's different with Kevin Stefanski when he's around the players?
Well, I've only seen clips in the locker room or post-game where, he gets a little more fiery, and we've heard players say that he was really fiery after one of those games a few weeks ago. I think you'd like to see a little bit of that without maybe, he's not going to throw a player or coach under the bus, but just a little more of this matter-of-fact stuff. I just think he's done it now for so long, since now 6 years, that it is just the same rote. He just turns on the tape recorder and he has the same, and we know it. We have to ask the questions about Deshaun Watson. I mean, that was asked again today because, okay, just soon we not ask these questions, but you got to get something. If you want to sound foolish and act like you don't really know what's going on, okay, there it is. But
Ian, I swear, Ian's producing in the background. Ian McBride, our buddy, producing the show in the background. I swear to God, if you put up a picture of Deshaun Watson, I'm leaving the show. Don't even do it.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard to say. I do know the players really like him. He's a player's coach. And if I was a player, I'd like him too, because for the most part, they got a pretty good deal. He gives more guys rest than I think most coaches. If you look on the injury report every week, there's 4 or 5 guys rest, that don't practice. And he's done that for a long time. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't cover these other coaches. You just see clips. So once in a while where they go off on something or here or there. That's just not his personality. I just think he's got the personality that he almost around the team forces himself to maybe be more of a fiery leader. I know when I coached, everybody thought I was this calm, cool guy. And I am. I'm kind of like very quiet. But when I was a high school basketball coach, and I got one technical in my career, but I didn't swear or anything like that. But I was pretty hot during the game. I was riding the officials and the players and stuff like that. But then I'd go back to being the nice guy.
Can you wait a minute? You're not just going to gloss over that, Fred. The people need to know. The people need to see fired up Fred Greetham getting a T as a high school coach.
Yeah, it was like really ridiculous what it was for.
Oh man.
I got off the bench and I said something very benign like, what did I do? Or what was that for? Or something. And the guy had just had enough and I go, what did you think I said? But anyway, no,
he heard that comment about his mom. He heard it.
Yeah. I don't use that language.
No, I know that we all.
So it's yeah. But no, I mean, that's why I can remember, because only one time in like 4 years high school varsity coaching. But yeah, I don't know. It is frustrating doing what I do. And all of us, we talk about it because it's like, you do feel like you're, I'll read the comments from fans and that, the media, they're so soft on, we try to ask questions, but there's only so many different ways you can ask a question, and you always get the same answer. The only questions that he really gives information is about the other team or a former player or along those lines that has nothing to do with the Browns, and unfortunately that's not what we're writing about.
Go ahead, Ian. Go ahead. Flash it up here, buddy. There it is. There's the picture. Now this, I will stay on the show for this. I'll stay on the show for this.
What are you going to do when he gets run out there?
You know what? At this point, I don't know. At this point, they're 2-7. I don't care. I don't care who they throw out there. Bring back Spurgeon Wynn and throw him out there. I don't care at this point.
that's the tough thing about this. There's 8 games to go because of that loss with the Jets. I mean, even me, Mr. Optimism, thought they had 4 out of 5 games against losing teams.
Yeah.
And they lost to the worst of them. Well, maybe not the worst of them, but maybe the Titans are. But you still got the Raiders and the Titans. You know, you
Listen,
don't have a juggernaut schedule still. And yet, even if you would have won that game, take away the 2 returns, you win that game, you barely would have beat probably the team that decided we're tanking, we're trying to lose, we're trading our best players because we want to get a quarterback next year in the draft. And you lost to them, or even you would have barely beaten them. You would have thought a sound win over the Jets, kind of like you did with the Dolphins.
listen, here's the thing. I'm going to answer this honestly, Fred. Had the Browns been winning some games, let's say they were around 500, but Dylan Gabriel was playing pretty poorly. But they're like right in the midst of the division and the playoff race and all that stuff. And let's say everything had gone pretty much the same as it has, but they won the games they should have won. They beat the Bengals, they beat the Vikings, they beat the Jets, and all of a sudden, this doesn't look as bad as it looks, right? And let's say they came out and told us they have a plan with Shedeur Sanders and they don't think he's ready, which I think is very clearly the case anyways. And they're not going to rush him out there no matter what. So Flacco stinks, but they win in spite of him. Gabriel stinks, but they win in spite of him. And then they come out and say, well, God, we got to try to figure something out. And they throw Deshaun back out there. I wouldn't have been mad at it. I'm not saying I would have been thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I despise that guy whose face shall not be shown. However, I could have understood that. If they threw him out there now, no. Dylan gets another shot, maybe 2 more. Shedeur goes the rest of the way. That's how this should look. That is how this should look. There is no reason to see that guy ever play again, especially in a season where you're going to get lucky to win 2 more games. Lucky.
You're asking about Stefanski, and information. I will tell you, reading between the lines, he's been asked about Watson twice this week, and his answers are telling you all you need to know. Yeah, that's not our focus. And today he said, yeah, I don't know, something to that line. Or, but to your point, they've lost 7 games easily. 3 of them were wins, should have been wins. But just say they won 2, and you're 4-5 right now. You still feel like you're right there. You're tied with the Ravens. You're only 1 game out in this division because the division's so bad. And that's what's so frustrating, is this was the year to just, make a move, because I don't know how many times you can rely on the Ravens to be bad because Lamar's hurt, the whole year, or Joe Burrow's out the whole year, or whatever. And so that's what's so frustrating, is that you're trying to rebuild on the fly, but clearly you have to find the quarterback. If you just had good play, average play from the quarterback, you would have won 2 or 3 more games. And you're sitting where you're at. And now you're in no man's land. You're 2-7. I don't know if you think there's still, you'd have to win 7 out of 8 games to have a winning record.
Wait. What?
If you go 7-1 the rest of the way, you're only 9-8. Think about that.
Fred, the Browns are going to go 7-1 the rest of the, I'm not saying,
no. I didn't
know you're
say
not
that.
saying that. I know you're not saying that. But there may be somebody watching this that's nodding their head. Yeah, maybe the Browns could go 7-1 the rest of the way. No, what? 1-7. Yeah. We got that backwards.
Well, yeah, when you look now with 8 games to go, we're looking at Tankathon to see where you're ranked in the draft. And so you're in no man's land. Do you really want, with 8 games to go, them to just go out and get beat and blown out every week and finish 2-15? Is that better than stumbling around and beating a team like the Packers Because that'll happen. There'll be somebody like the Ravens or the 49ers or somebody 2 or 3 times, and you'll end up with 5, 6 wins, bad season, but you knocked yourself out of contention if there is a franchise quarterback there. So it's just, you just feel like you're chasing your tail. And covering the team, it's tough because you hate covering a losing team.
Yeah.
And now you're sitting here going, well, do you really want them to win? Do you want them to lose? That's why I wrote that story last week, Race to the Bottom. And I was really thinking the Browns would win that game and that it would cost them in the draft. They ended up losing that game. So now, do you want to protect your draft spot? A lot of people would say yes. But right now, it's not looking like there's a surefire, franchise quarterback when everybody said this was next year was going to be the year for it. You remember we talked about it, and I said it seems like all the time, by the time you get there, all the guys that were supposed to be great aren't anymore, and it's kind of like looking that way again.
But that's the juxtaposition of the fans' point of view and people like us, the writers, especially you dive into our OBR guys that go so in depth, Jack in the Cap and all that stuff. That's the juxtaposition that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, they have to walk there, because you can say, yeah, we don't want to win more games. We want the best draft picks possible, blah, blah, blah. That ain't going to fly with Joe Bitonio. You're going to have to walk in the locker room. You're going to have to walk in the locker room and figure that out with Joe Bitonio. You're going to have to walk in the locker room and figure that. Listen, Myles Garrett got his contract. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to win. I had somebody say that to me the other day. I wish Myles Garrett would just kind of shut up now. He got his contract. No, what? That dude wants to win. Denzel Ward wants to win. Wyatt Teller wants to win. These guys aren't going to go out there. These players are not out there tanking, and the organization can't just tank because that sends a horrendous message at this point to a lot of guys that are well established. This isn't just a young team with no stars on it, and kind of that group we saw with the Browns when they were winning one game in 2 years. It isn't that. These are guys that want this thing turned around fast, and so you can't send that message in that locker room. You can't.
No, that's to your point. They got 7 or 8 Pro Bowlers on it, and that was the message, I think, with bringing Flacco in. Let's go for it. Although I think they pulled the plug way too early, to expect the rookie to step in London and so forth. But who knows? That's what I said. I look at last year. It's interesting. Jameis Winston was named the star today. I'm not saying he's the answer, but when he stepped in for Watson last year, there was a night and day difference in the offense, and they won games. He threw interceptions, but he threw 300 yards, and I would rather see that any day than what we've been seeing. But
do you remember how much fun we're talking about wins and losses? You remember how fun that Denver game was last year?
Well, how about the Pittsburgh?
And they lost it, and it was fun.
In the Pittsburgh game at home, on Thursday night and in the snow, and but they'll never say this, but I think they made a determination. We might win some games here with Winston. Let's turn it over to DTR and Zappy. And they didn't win again the rest of the year because they were 3 wins. They beat the Ravens last year at home with Winston. And then they pulled the plug a couple weeks later and played out the season because, again, they might have won 2 or 3 games, and instead of having the second pick in the draft, they might have had the 8th or 10th. And so I don't know what they're going to do. But the coach, unless the coach and the general manager have on good authority from the owner that they're okay, they got to win some games. I don't think 2-15 flies. I don't think 4-13 flies, but that's just me.
Well, that's us, and I don't think it's just you. I think it's a lot of people. And that was a very interesting conversation that I did not really have on the docket to start this, but lots of good stuff. First of all, in the comments, you guys are lighting it up out there, and you really kind of help propel that conversation, so we appreciate you. Listen, as we get to the halfway point, just a reminder, you can get over to the OBR.com, hit subscribe to be a part of Cleveland's oldest and largest independent Browns coverage site. There's the QR code. Look at how fancy I am. I can just throw that up on the screen like that. You could click that or scan that QR code, and get over to the OBR.com. Make sure you subscribe, become a part of the community that we have at the OBR.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, Twitch tonight, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit follow, hit like, do all that stuff. Just helps us out as we continue to grow and grow and grow. Now it's time for the second part of our show, our second segment where we bring in our special guest. And again, we've been, I won't say fortunate because I think it just shows you the respect that people have for Fred Greetham, the legend that he is. But we've had a great time with a lot of special guests, and this week is going to be no different. This is somebody that I've gotten to know a little bit through my time at Garage Beers. He's always been a great guest. You see him and you hear his voice every covering the Browns sports, Cleveland. He is the sports director for Channel 5 here in Cleveland, and we're going to bring him in right now. It is Jon Doss. Jon, welcome inside the Browns beat.
Hey, guys. Yeah, it has nothing to do with you, Mike. I can't stand you, but Fred, really appreciate being on the show.
Thanks, John. It's great to have you.
I needed you to come in like that. I appreciated that.
Well,
coming in hot.
You set it up.
Hey, John, we had one of your colleagues a few weeks ago. We had Cam on, and I see her every day, and so we wanted to get you on here, and we see you on the pre-games and the preseason and so forth, and we like to get to know our guests a little bit. A lot of times we just come on, it's a sterile football, and you're on, you're off, and so forth. So why don't you tell us a little of your journey, how you ended up to Channel 5?
Well, how about Fumble 13? This guy's voice does not match his face. It's not the first time I've heard it. You guys know that. It's been 8 years. It has been a while since I have heard it. So I'm pretty sure I'm wearing you guys down, except for Fumble 13, who is not yet convinced that this is, in fact, my real voice. People ask me all the time. I tell them bourbon and cigarettes. Mike, you know.
Yeah, all right, 100%.
No, I've been in Cleveland now almost 8 years. Hard to believe. I've been fortunate enough that in my time here, we've been the TV partner of the Browns my whole time here. So I've been on Browns Countdown every season. As you mentioned, Fred, the preseason has kind of become our Super Bowl. We've got all the preseason games on our air, and it's been a major opportunity. You have the voice of a heavy smoker, not cigarettes. I'll say that, not cigarettes. And yeah, I've been very, very fortunate with the amount of coverage that we've been. It's legal now, Mike. Damn it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've been very fortunate to have the opportunities that I've had here at News 5 and around the Browns.
I do want to throw this out while everybody's focused on the voice and the face. I'm going to let you. This is inside the Browns beat, but this is inside the Jon Doss conversation. I've never met anybody that wants to look older in my life than Jon Doss. We had our buddy Seth that makes up all of our graphics, made up our really cool graphic for our show tonight. We use the same picture on Garage Beers. He whips those things up like it's nothing. He makes it look good. And every time John's like, oh, we're going to use an old picture of me, huh? You want to look older and more sophisticated.
Used a picture of me from Bakersfield. That picture was taken 9 years ago before both of my children. In fact, look at all the gray hair, none of which is present in that picture that you posted.
You look the exact same, and everybody knows it.
Well, I do appreciate that. Actually, for the first time in my career, it's always been an issue that there it is. Oh, my God.
Haven't aged a day.
And that shirt combo with the tie does not work. For the first time in my life, so my entire career, the big knock on me, aside from my voice not matching my body, which Fumble 13 astutely pointed out, and I've gotten the Rick Astley before too. The first time in my life, one of the grandmothers at pickup at my son's school asked me how old I was. And when I told her my age, she said, "No way, I thought you were way older." First time that has ever happened.
You've arrived. Hey, does anybody ever say you sound like Kevin Harlan?
I do get Kevin Harlan. I get Marv Albert sometimes without the proclivities. Most of the proclivities, I'll say. And I get, who do I get? Looks a lot like Siciliano. Get the hell out of here. Andrew would say that that's false too. I get a lot of, who's the American Idol guy?
Clay Aiken.
Not Clay Aiken.
100%.
You know what?
Ryan Seacrest?
No, the other guy sings. I think he sings like country music now, maybe.
Oh, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't think.
All right, maybe somebody in the chat knows. American Idol guy. He never won, but he was like a runner-up or something.
Scotty something.
Scotty.
Yeah.
Scotty Scheffler.
Nope, that ain't it. But yes, Scott. It's Scotty something.
McCreary,
I know who you're talking about.
Scotty McCreary.
Big deep voice. Yes.
Scotty McCreary.
Okay.
I used to get that when I used to go shoot high school football games. I would get that a lot from the cheerleaders. Are you Scotty McCreary? And every time I'd say, yes, I am.
Well, you got to see a little. You were here at the end of LeBron, right? So you got to see a couple of the runs with the championship, even though they didn't get it. You got to feel the culture and how crazy this sports town is without having winners in football and even in baseball as far as championships.
Yeah, I was actually just reliving that, Fred, because I started in April of 2018. So I got to town and I was in town for a week and a half. Before I was on air, it was games 1 and 2 against the Pacers in that opening series. And I had a credential already. I wasn't on air yet, but I went to the arena and I watched those 2 games. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible. And then that run, which was, at that point kind of unexpected for that team to go into Boston and beat the Celtics in Game 7 was incredible. It was truly incredible. And to be honest, I think to start my career in Cleveland with that, I've kind of been chasing it, I feel like, the last 8 years. I'm really invested in this Cavs team right now. I hope that they get there. And clearly, because of our professional relationships, I've been heavily invested in the Browns, for better or worse. And yeah, I've just kind of been chasing that feeling again, playing for a championship.
All right. So, guys, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fred. Go ahead.
I was just going to, you went to Cal Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
You follow the Golden Bears?
I followed that ass kicking that we gave 15 ranked Louisville last week on the road. Absolutely. And I do actually, it's funny, I have followed them a little bit more the last couple of years because my kids are 8 and 5. My boys, my 8-year-old finally starting kind of getting into sports a little bit, and my 5-year-old. We took them to their first Cal game last year at Pitt. It's the only benefit to Cal now being in the ACC is that a couple times a year they come to Pitt or they go to Syracuse, where I went to grad school, and I have the opportunity to go see those teams. I have been paying attention this year because who was the quarterback at Cal last year?
Mr. Mendoza.
That's what I want to know. I want to know what you think of Mendoza.
We're in draft season now, John. What's the scoop with Mendoza?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly wasn't all that impressed when he was at Cal. He was very underwhelming when we saw him on the road at Pitt last year. He did some good things, clearly had some talent. I thought that when he left and took that gig at Indiana, I was a little confused because at that time he was an average to slightly above average quarterback, but clearly that system has really fit him, and he's got the physical tools, and he's grown another year, right? I think that's a big deal from year 2 to year 3. And he has shown that. He's been fantastic at Indiana, and that throw that he made, the game winner at Penn State, it was a big time throw. I don't, I'm not a draft analyst. I'm not a general manager wannabe. I don't know how he's going to translate to the NFL, but I have been impressed with what I've seen in Indiana.
Well, where do you think the Browns go now? I mean, we've talked about the first half hour. You got 8 games to go. And there's really no play to make other than to see Shedeur Sanders. Where do you think is the time or how they transition, with Gabriel and Sanders, and what do they do at the position going forward in your opinion?
I'm not convinced that they are going to transition at any point. I think that there has not been a single leak inside that locker room, inside those coaching offices, that says, this sucks, Dylan Gabriel sucks, we need Shedeur, we need to see Shedeur. The people that are around Shedeur Sanders every day, in the meeting rooms, in the film rooms, on the practice field, in and outside the facility, eating lunch, nobody is leaking that Shedeur Sanders should be the starting quarterback of this team. And I get the frustration. I get that Dylan Gabriel has not knocked our socks off through his 5 career starts. And I get that Shedeur Sanders is this enigmatic player that, he's got this charisma and everybody wants to see him play. but those that are around him on a daily basis for 12 to 16 hours a day right now do not believe he's capable of being an NFL quarterback. And we all want to trot him out there. We all want something different. We want change. And I understand that. And I'm sympathetic to that. I also believe that this coaching staff sees Dillon Gabriel as a potential backup quarterback in the NFL, and that they do see these as valuable reps. And I don't know that they're convinced that Shedeur belongs in the NFL. So I don't know, regardless of how bad it gets, I don't know that we're going to see Shedeur Sanders.
Well, I've heard the same thing, or not heard anything. I'm around every day. And usually if a player might not come talk to me about it, but they'll let some of the more prominent, maybe reporters with a bigger audience or TV, like you said, leak to them to get the ramp up, maybe a little more attention to it. And I haven't heard anything, because they would say, especially these veterans, look, we're 2-7. This guy is way better in practice than the guy we're playing. We need to get him on the field. And you're not hearing that. So I have to take the same point that you just made, that they feel like Gabriel is ahead still of Sanders.
And let's step back and let's look at this big picture wise, right? We are all saying, everybody is saying Dillon Gabriel is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Okay. A few weeks ago, the Browns went into New England, and we had Browns Countdown. We have Nathan Zagura on Browns Countdown. And he had to pump the brakes, and he had to step back a little bit and say, listen, we're sitting here comparing Dillon Gabriel to Drake May. Dillon Gabriel was a third-round pick in the NFL draft. Drake May was the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. Drake May was selected to be a franchise quarterback. And now you can say that this argument is detrimental to Andrew Berry and that they should have been more prepared. Dillon Gabriel was taken in the 3rd round for a reason. Shedeur Sanders largely was taken in the 5th round for a reason. Neither of these guys were thought by anybody else in the NFL to be a franchise quarterback. And the Browns, punched their lottery ticket times 2. And at this point, it has not worked out, but it's not entirely surprising that it has not worked out.
What are you guys looking for? So I saw this floating around the internet today, and it was a comparison through their first 5 starts of Dillon Gabriel and Cam Ward down in Tennessee. And man, oh man, are those numbers pretty much the same. There are some things that Dillon Gabriel does a little better than Cam Ward, and there's some things Cam Ward does a little better than Dillon Gabriel. But I don't think that's how you would obviously evaluate it. It certainly wouldn't be how I would evaluate it. Obviously, situations are different and expectations are different. But when you start putting these guys, it's kind of like what you were saying there, John. You're not necessarily going to compare Dillon Gabriel to Drake May or to Cam Ward, to be honest. But as we kind of continue through this process, what are we looking for here? What steps do you think realistically, Fred, John, both of you, what steps do you think realistically Dillon Gabriel can take? What signs can he show? What improvements do you think are in his bag to not make him the franchise quarterback, but to make him a guy that you feel like, hey, okay, if we have a starter 2 years down the road that gets hurt, we're okay with this guy coming in?
Go ahead.
I think moving the football and completing the football, those have been his biggest issues. I heard you guys talking about Mike putting that dollar on the 95-yard drive. His completion percentage right now, 2nd lowest in football for those quarterbacks that qualify. And he's missed a lot of receivers. He's made some throws, right? The throw that he made to Fannin over the weekend was beautiful. There's been some debate on the throw to Judy, whether or not that was a good pass. They ended up in a touchdown. But he's got to show confidence in the offense, moving the football and completing passes. Here's the issue. And much like Cam Ward, you can have all the talent in the world. You can be a very average rookie quarterback, like those 2 guys. If you don't have talent around you, it won't matter. So we say, what do we want to see from Dillon Gabriel? I want to see him go out and get 3 new wide receivers. I want to see him go out and recruit an offensive line, right? Because nobody is set up for success in this offense. It wouldn't matter who the quarterback is, as we saw evidenced by Joe Flacco struggling with this offense and going to Cincinnati and immediately having tons of success with the Bengals and putting up points. There is nothing on this offense outside of Quinshon Judkins, David Njoku, probably Harold Fannin, and you're going to have Judy back next year because of the contract extension. Outside of that, there is nothing that is going right for this offense right now. So it's a little unfair even. Do I think Dylan Gabriel is a franchise quarterback? Probably not. But it is a little unfair, even at this moment, 5 starts in, to judge a guy based on that offense, which I believe in totality is the worst offense in football.
Yeah, well said. I mean, the Browns didn't do Gabriel any favors by drafting Sanders, because I think there'd be a little more patience if he wasn't sitting on the bench as the silver bullet. Everybody thinks he's going to step in, and maybe he will, like he did in that first preseason game, and look like an all-pro. But I wrote today about that, is that everybody's blaming Gabriel for the lack of offense, but the offense was right where it is now when Joe Flacco was in there. The offensive line, is because the offensive line is not what they used to be. They're all Pro Bowlers in the past, but keyword is in the past. Wide receivers. I heard Joe Flacco after his first game, when he threw the ball 20 times to Jamar Chase, say, I didn't really know the plays that were called, but I saw number 1 and I saw number 5, and I just saw where they were and got the ball to them. That's very simple, but I think that goes a long way. They have not invested in the draft at all in wide receivers. I felt it was the third biggest priority behind a quarterback in another position last off season. And not only didn't they draft a wide receiver, they didn't sign a wide receiver. You know, it was just like, we're going to go with all these 3rd, 4th round and lower guys that we drafted in the past. Yeah. So right there, the weapons around him. I'm one of the old ones. I've seen this forever. Everybody wants the shiny object, the quarterback to fix everything. Tim Couch, I think, would have been a really good quarterback. He was beaten up so bad. By the time they had a little bit of talent around him, he couldn't throw anymore. Yeah. You know, they wanted the shiny object with Johnny Manziel. They wanted the shiny object with Deshaun Watson. And so it's just, I agree with that, is you need to get the surrounding cast, and then you insert somebody into the cockpit. You know, they had the best supporting cast when Derek Anderson got thrown in there, and he was a Pro Bowler.
He won 10 games.
Because they had people around him, and they just put him in, and he was adequate. Yeah. So, yeah, you're exactly right. You know, it's they got more problems than a quarterback.
And how sad is that? And honestly, how demoralizing is it that you look at Dylan Gabriel and you say, he's probably the 4th biggest issue on this team. Discipline, special teams, and that offensive line are all much bigger issues than Dylan Gabriel. And, you know, this was my worry coming into this year, guys, because the Browns kind of set back with this offensive line and said, well, we were injured. Well, to your point, Fred, these guys are all Pro Bowlers. I was once athletic, and now I break my ankle on the golf course. We are not what we once were. And to sit back and to say, well, these guys are all good. They were hurt. They're going to be fine. No.
Did you say on the golf course?
I broke it on the golf course, yeah. How sad is that? Father Time, undefeated. This offensive line is completely depleted. Thank you for what you've done in the past. They were all fantastic at one point, but they have deteriorated over the last 2 years. That is the biggest issue for this team. Say what you will about Dylan Gabriel. Say what you want about Shedeur Sanders. Anybody behind this offensive line at the moment is going to struggle.
John, Fred, you guys, John, you just brought up the next topic that I had here. Fred, you and I spent a lot of the first part of the show talking about Kevin Stefanski, his demeanor, the way he comes out and addresses things and answers or doesn't answer questions based on what your opinion is that he should do. But there's a conversation that has to be had. And John, you brought up special teams, and man, oh man, were we all excited when they brought in Bubba Ventrone. He is a former Cleveland Browns special teams ace. He was going to be the next. I think a lot of people thought he was like the next guy in line. He wasn't just going to be a special teams guy. He was going to be like associate head coach.
Yeah.
Like he was going to be the next guy. And I got to tell you guys, unmitigated disaster. And it's not just the Jets game. They can't make kicks. They constantly flub things on kickoffs and punts, constantly with penalties. And then it culminated, guys, this week in a game where they just really gave themselves no chance. And it was the special teams that gave the Browns no chance in this game because we talked about it. The way things went, they go on the 95-yard drive. I'm eating crow. It's amazing. Boom, instant kick return for a touchdown. You force a 3 and out. Instant kick or punt return for a touchdown. And you spot this team 14. You can't spot NFL teams 14 points no matter how bad they are. You can't spot them 14 points. And so it culminated with just a disaster on the special teams side. So what does the conversation have to be around Bubba and this special teams unit?
Yeah, Nevada, I did not get a mulligan, and I unfortunately did not get to finish the round either. It was on the 7th hole. Yeah, it was unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, look, with kickers and special teams coordinators, I never put much stock in that. If you don't have a talented kicker and he misses it a lot, what are you going to do as a special teams coordinator, right? Andre Schmidt has not.
Hey, kick it left.
He's not been great. Hey, make this one. How about that? Right. Andre Schmidt's not been great. What's Bubba Ventrone going to do about that? But kick coverage units and motivation and having the right people in the right places is, I think, all on a special teams coordinator. I don't know if you know what the record is for most kick and punt returns allowed for a touchdown in a single season. Care to take a guess?
4.
It's 4. The
Nice,
Browns
Fred.
allowed 3, and there are 8 games left. So not great. I firmly believe that the Haslams will not be making any alterations to this coaching staff midseason. I believe that at the very beginning of the season. I believe that when they had the conversations, the candid conversations about the Deshaun Watson trade. I believe that they were giving Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and this staff the runway to try to get out from under this Deshaun Watson debacle. So I don't think that they're making any alterations midseason. That said, each time I say that, I say it with a caveat that, well, unless this goes really bad, or this goes really bad, or this goes really bad. And it's hard to envision anything going worse than it did Sunday in Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that, how that transpired. Mike Prefer was a friend of Stefanski's. He brought him from Minnesota down here. And after that season, they didn't make any moves at special teams. And then there's a change in Indianapolis, and Ventrone became available, and he immediately then fired Prefer and brought in Ventrone, made him associate head coach. And it hasn't been that great, to say the least, not just this year, but even last year. And so it is, but he's defending him. That's his MO. He doesn't. Tomorrow we'll talk to Ventrone, it'll be interesting, but it's, you would just like to see something happen. And I don't mean heads roll, but a little more, of pounding the fist or table that we're going to get it right, because that's on a team that is as fragile as the Browns. Every time I was talking the first half hour, the offense, anything goes wrong, they're derailed. They go 95 yards. You think they got momentum, the kick return. They went the next quarter and a half doing nothing, like 3 and outs, until Hickman got the interception, returned it to 22. Boom, they got a touchdown. And when you're playing the way the Browns, you had the 2 kick returns that cost you against the Jets the game. We all know the Bengals game to start the season. You had a block punt, I think it was against the Ravens, and you had a punt return against the Lions. All those contributed heavily in losses. So I don't know how you can defend that. I even made the comment, why don't you just punt the ball out of bounds, to make sure they can't
sideways.
What's the difference? If they're going to fair catch it or if they try to return it or whatever, you take the chance on a return for a touchdown. If you just don't feel, almost like our moxie is, well, we're going to kick it and we're going to make the play. And then
And they
14
don't.
points later, the game's over.
Well, far be it for me to play devil's advocate or be the voice of reason, which in 2025 on a digital platform does not exist. But much like we say with Shedeur Sanders, everybody said, "Oh, I look good against Carolina. Why not play?" There is so much that goes into being a starting quarterback in the NFL, much of which we don't even see, right? Everything that goes on in the meeting rooms and the film rooms and all that stuff. You can believe in that organization, if you're Kevin Stefanski or you're the Haslams, that Bubba Ventrone is a fantastic coach that is destined to be a good head coach one day. And that there are so many other intangible things maybe that he brings to that coaching staff. And that's why you keep him along. It's unfortunate that his title is special teams coordinator, and the Browns special teams has been maybe the worst unit in football. There are many other things that go into being a coach, and maybe he excels at all those other things, and that's why they keep him around.
John, Fred, before John, we let you out of here to go get ready for your night of work over there. I want to end with some positives here. We've spoken a little bit on the offensive side of the ball over the course of the year. We've obviously talked a lot about Quinshon Judkins, who is just a home run pick for the Cleveland Browns. It continues to look like it. Harold Fannin continues to look like a home run pick for the Cleveland Browns. But the more this season goes along, if we want to end on something positive, guys, I want to take it to the defensive side of the ball. And I want to talk about those two guys that they brought in to shore up the middle of the defense. They really focused on the middle of the defense this offseason. And the two guys that they made high draft picks, their highest draft picks, are really making them look good for it. Mason Graham continues to look better and better and better and better every single game. He looks like a guy that can turn into a dominant force on the defensive line. And I believe we're not going to talk about gambling here in Cleveland. We can't talk about that anymore. But I believe the new favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year is Carson Schlesinger, who has just been a lightning rod out there, a guy that is just he's everywhere and he's making every play. And then he's got a little, I called it the David Njoku factor. One of the things you got to love about a guy like David Njoku is that he's not just going to sit. He's not gonna not play. If he can play, he's gonna play. The dude showed up after like burning his face off and played in a football game. And Carson Schlesinger, we heard about his injury. We heard he's probably gonna miss a little bit of time. It's a little bit more significant than what we thought. And there he is. Didn't miss any time. He's out there and he's shooting around making plays. Those two guys have been phenomenal for the defense for the Cleveland Browns.
And the defense is the only thing that you know, the only silver lining, the only bit of light in what feels like a very claustrophobic tunnel, right? Because for the first time in a long time, and I would argue for the first time probably since 2016, there feels like no way out of this. You look at the offense, because at least in 2016, 2017, even when they had the winless season, they were going to have the number one pick in a loaded quarterback class. It's the first time since then that I feel like, what do you got? Even if you get the number one pick, it's not a heralded quarterback class. It just feels suffocating. But defensively, they are so good at so many positions that it's why it doesn't have to be a full rebuild, and you can concentrate all those efforts in the offseason on this offense because you feel really good about what you have on the defensive front. And I think Mason Graham can continue to grow, but they're the best defensive front in football statistically. Linebacking core has been much better with Schlesinger, and fingers crossed if you ever get Jeremiah back. And the secondary has been good. Denzel Ward kind of taking a step back this year, but you know that it's in there, and hopefully you get MJ Emerson back, and Delpit and Hickman have turned into a really good safety duo. You like almost everything about that defense. That's what gives you some cause for optimism, knowing that you go into an offseason where you have to overhaul an entire offense, everything outside of Quinshon Judkins and probably Harold Fannin Jr. and again Judy because of the extension. Outside of those guys, you have to overhaul an entire offense, which is an arduous task, dare I say impossible task. But you don't really have to focus on the defense all that much in the offseason, and that is at least nice.
The last year, they were the worst offense in the NFL. So I thought, just like you were talking about, all your attention should be on the offense. You know, the wide receiver in the first round, like Abuka, or whatever. But you look at Graham, you look at the trade they made, and it looks really good now, especially this year because Hunter's out for the season. So you ended up getting Graham, Judkins, and Sampson basically for Hunter and a number 1 pick that is to be determined. But with that said, I agree completely. You felt like the defense would keep you competitive this year, and then you add 2 more studs to that. That really bodes well for the future. The offense we thought would just be average at best with switching back to the zone scheme and, where the offensive line was supposed to be really good. And it's actually been the offense of last year again. And you didn't really see that coming, but you didn't add much on that side of the ball. So with that being said, you mentioned JOK. Can you imagine? I don't know what to read into. The last thing we heard from him was something positive. If he could be released and play again, can you imagine Schlesinger and JOK, a linebacker, 2 sideline to sideline players? But even without him, it bodes well. Now you put all your attention. You got to get a quarterback somewhere. But if you don't have that guy, you get everything around it. Even if you got to take 2 tackles in the first round or a wide receiver and a tackle, and don't force the quarterback, get the other pieces. If you can't get the quarterback in the draft, there's a lot of retreads that are looking pretty good the second time around. Daniel Jones was the guy floating around nobody wanted, and all of a sudden the Colts have been turned around. And there's stories like that all over the place. I don't know if there's one next year. But yeah, that's the hope, is the defense can be as good, if not better. But now the offense, you put all your attention, and you clearly have to bring in, you got 2 first-round picks that you can address to get those needs. There's some good-looking players at positions of need right now.
Well, they better stack them because they need 4 offensive linemen probably at season's end that may have to start for you. And you got to figure out a receiver or 2. So it's why I was a little upset that they weren't more aggressive at the trade deadline. I didn't care about being a buyer to compete the second half of this season, which we know is a lost season. I wanted them to be buyers to set themselves up for next year to make this offseason task of overhauling this entire offense a little more palatable.
Yeah. I'm throwing this out there. You guys just talked about it, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. We're going to talk about it in an hour on Garage Beers. But Chad, my co-host on Garage Beers, brought this up to me, and I just can't stop thinking about it. If that quarterback isn't there that you love at that top pick, go ahead and take 2 wide receivers. Could you imagine walking out of that draft with Tyson out of Arizona State and Carnell Tate out of Ohio State? Add them to Jerry Jeudy, who can now just be like a move around the line kind of guy. All of a sudden, your wide receiver room doesn't stink anymore.
You know who else would love taking Tyson out of Arizona State?
Who else would love that?
His brother.
Oh, yeah. His brother would love that, wouldn't he?
Absolutely.
We can have the whole Tyson family, and we just got to find one that plays baseball.
Tyson's another Cal guy. Jalen's another Cal guy, so I'll take it.
We just got to find one that plays baseball. We can get him on the Guardians. All right, John.
And Tyson, Cal connection.
Let's go. This has been great, John. Thank you for coming on. It continues to look daunting every week as they continue to lose games to come on and just have a show about the Browns. And then we get our special guests in like you this week, which just makes it much more palatable and much more enjoyable. And I'm not going to say any other nice things about you, but it's been great having you. We appreciate you coming on. You can check out Jon Doss, Channel 5 sports director, doing all the things for Cleveland sports, but we appreciate you coming inside the Browns beat with us.
It could always get worse. I have to be at the stadium for 14 hours on Sunday. Consider yourself lucky.
I might watch the game.
Thanks for coming on, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
See you, John. How about Jon Doss from Channel 5? What a good guy coming on, joining us, talking about the Cleveland Browns. Again, he's a guy we got to know on Garage Beers. He's been on there a couple times with us. I'm sure we will do that again at some point, but maybe it's when we can talk about other teams. But a big-time shout-out to John for coming on. A huge thank you to him. Fred, I just brought up Garage Beers, so I'll give it the shameless plug. We're getting ready to end the show here. I'm going to go take a break for about 56 minutes, and then I will be back to come on to Garage Beers and hang out, have a couple drinks. We're going to talk a lot about college football again. We've got a really awesome guest, Mecca Don. He is a former player at Ohio State, and now he's really turned into he's a musician and an entrepreneur, but he's really well connected to Ohio State. We're going to have him on to talk Buckeyes football and college football. Plus, we'll get into the Browns and the Cavs and the Jackets and all that. So 9 o'clock, Garage Beers coming up. Fred, you know our guest for next week. Why don't you give it the special announcement there?
Yeah, we're going to go stick with the TV guys, and Channel 8, Fox 8, John Sable is going to join us next week on Inside the Browns Beat. So we've had a different guest every week that we've had the show. I don't know how long we can do this, but they keep agreeing to come on, and we appreciate Jon Doss coming on tonight. And next week, John Sable will be our guest. And hopefully we'll have something nice to talk about after playing the Ravens this Sunday.
Well, we'll have something to talk about, and that is for sure. No, credit to you, Fred. I know I've got a connection with John, so a big shout out to him for coming on, but credit to you for all the guests that we have gotten. I do want to throw out just a very quick programming note. I want to prepare you for it. In 2 weeks, obviously, it's Thanksgiving week. And we're not coming out here and doing a show at 7 o'clock on Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. You don't want to watch that. You got family, you got friends, you might be going out for a fun night, whatever. So we are going to, we're going to record that. We're going to get a guest for that week, and we're going to record it early, and we're just going to drop it Wednesday morning. We're just going to put it on YouTube. It's not going to be a live show in 2 weeks. It'll just be one that you can catch at your convenience. We'll put it on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all that stuff, so you can watch it whenever. But I just want to get that out in front of you the week of Thanksgiving, and this will be the same for Garage Beers. We're going to pre-record those shows and then just release them later. So just want to make sure you guys all know that. Look, Chris is like, but guys, I have no friends. We know. There's a whole bunch of friends in these comments, but we know you have friends, Chris. We know you have friends.
We'll put it on this time so you can pretend it's live.
That's right. And then we can all be friends. No, that's, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So listen, last order of business here before we get out of here, just our thank yous. First thank you goes out to the OBR for hosting us. Get over to theobr.com, hit subscribe, become a part of the oldest, largest independent Browns coverage site in all of Cleveland. And make sure wherever you're at on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, you hit follow, you hit subscribe, you hit like, all that stuff. But the OBR is still just the home for some of the best Browns coverage in all of the land. So make sure you are subscribed there. Big thank you to Jon Doss, the sports director from Channel 5 News here in Cleveland. And he does, again, pregame show, preseason stuff, all that. Jon Doss is a phenomenal asset that we have here in the media in Cleveland. And it was awesome to have him on, have a couple laughs. He was a good guy to kind of lighten the mood, to be honest, because it needed it. So we really appreciate him for coming on. And our last and biggest thank you goes out to all of you, whether you watched us live here tonight. The chat was awesome, both on the YouTube and the Twitch side, or whether you catch us later. Remember, you can always catch us on demand, YouTube, Twitch, or on the podcast variety. We appreciate you. We love you. And we thank you for your support. That's going to do it for us for this week's episode of Inside the Browns Beat. For Fred, I am Mike. We will see you next week. Until then, as always, go Browns.
Matt, everybody, thanks for watching.